Hey YouTube. So, if you've been following my predictions there, one of them I was talking about autonomous vehicles, and anyways, I was kind of doing some reading online, and I came across a pretty interesting article, and I figure maybe I'll, as I see some of the my predictions getting closer to looking like they're coming true or not coming true, maybe I'll make some videos on it. Anyways, this I thought this was pretty interesting, so. Um, for you guys, I'll just get into kind of the news article, so to speak. Um, a lot of people don't know, and I'm looking down a lot. I apologize for that, and the lighting's really bad in here. Um, but I'm looking down at my notes. So Alphabet and Company. So Google kind of restructured their company and stuff, and one of their companies is over here is called Alphabet and Company, and so I think they kind of tried to do some kind of holding corporation thing to help them split off, which is a really good move because the internet feels like it's changing, which is a different. I should make a different video of that, and it's becoming so commercialized. And plus, a lot of people. I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but there's really another internet. It's called the Internet 2, and that's if the internet seems like it's dumbed down really bad. That's because um, back in the day when you used to be able to get on the internet, uh, you had to be like in the military or work in a university or maybe some medical facilities or some government agencies in order just to get access to it. And at that time, if you so much mentioned selling something, you could get your username and password revoked, and then you couldn't get back on the internet. So if you said I'm selling a doghouse, that'd be enough to get you thrown off the internet. And we've gone from that to today to where it's just all commercialization. But they've set up a second internet so that they can continue on research and stuff like that. It's mostly, which I don't know much about it because I'm out of the loop. I used to be, like I said, I was one of the first guys on the internet before people even knew kind of like much about it, before it was mainstream. That was back in the day. It was when it was all text, and there was a cool thing called Veronica. I can't even remember if that was the FTP crawler or not, but they were just inventing hyperlinks and stuff like that. But anyhow, I digress. My point is there's a second internet, and that's where all the cool research and development goes on. And companies like Google probably have access to that, and they might be able to talk to real engineers and stuff like that, like you could in the day. There are most of the people that are really in the know of the cutting edge stuff probably aren't messing around too much on the regular internet that you and I call the internet anymore. Anyhow, that being said, um, that's one of the reasons why I think Google has restructured their company so they can do kind of like high tech research and development and sprung off into different areas, because the internet part is starting to change rapidly, and it's kind of turning into this almost like a TV thing, in my opinion. Hopefully it won't, but it's so commercialized that being a search engine's probably not going to continue to pan out, which was what they started off. And they've been really smart. I mean, they jumped on YouTube, and you see seems like Facebook come out, and those are so dramatically different from what the vision of the internet kind of was thinking. And I think all the tech side of it is, like I said, a lot of it's bleeding over to the internet too, which most people don't have access to. Anyhow, so their restructuring helps them play in different areas, and one of them is getting into autonomous cars. A very sharp move. They got a lot of money by branching out into autonomous cars. Their company could become the next like GE. If you really look at GE, you think of GE light bulbs. Um, you think of Edison and all those guys, General Electric. But then they got into everything. They're one of the biggest companies in the United States, and they make everything from jet engines to, boy, huge. You go into the medical field, you look at all these MRI machines and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff's made by GE. It's just phenomenal the amount of stuff that they make that you might not be aware of that they're into, that has nothing to do with the light bulb. Anyhow, so that's kind of, I think, what Google's game plan is too, is to keep expanding out and getting bigger and bigger to the point it gets such a behemoth company. It's like one of those giant banks that it couldn't collapse anymore because it was too important, had their fingers into too many pots. Anyhow, they're at the beginning of that stage, and I think they got a whole car autonomous vehicle department because they see the future and they want to get in on that market. That being said, I didn't realize this. I learned a lot of stuff by reading this article. They're just getting ready to go into apparently Kirkland, Washington, and I found out that they were in 2 other states already. They're in Mountain View, California, and Austin, Texas, and so they're breaking into the Kirkland, Washington state. And it was kind of interesting. They wanted to get in there because of the heavy rain, and they want to get experience in adverse climate conditions. So that shows you they're pushing the envelope. And also, I didn't realize this. I mentioned in my prediction vehicle that, it was easier to go to the government and say, I'm sorry, than can I. If you go up to the government and say, can I do this? They'll always say no because they panic and don't know what they're doing. It's easier just to do it, and then when the government asks about it, they're like, well, we've been doing this for a couple of years, driving around with autonomous vehicles. I didn't realize they were doing it this long. Apparently, they've been in Mountain View, California, driving around for 6 years. So people are like, oh, that technology will not work and stuff like that. They've been doing it for 6 years. And so one of the things that they've been doing, and probably why they haven't been getting caught, is if you go to Google Maps and you do the street view and you see your, looks like you can see, sometimes you even see the reflection of a mirror or window, and you can see the Google car and stuff. I actually saw one of those Google cars come through my town back before only the tech guys kind of knew what was going on, and we actually bought the guy pizza. I hope nobody knows. I don't even know his name, so I can't get him in trouble, I hope. We talked him into letting us see his top secret Google car and everything, and how his camera recorder stuff was going. We kind of bribed him with free pizza and stuff, and explaining we were tech guys, and we had all prominent jobs at the time, so we could kind of trust him because we worked at, I think I was working for a bank at the time in their IT department, and another guy, I'm not going to mention where everybody else worked, but the other guys all had very respectable positions in other jobs too. And so I think we were able to convince them to open up. And we were surprised to see the technology before it was in the newspapers that I was aware of. Then after, they got more and more coverage, people started knowing what they're about. But I'm mumbling about that because they're using the autonomous cars for street views. So they don't have to put the driver in there anymore, which actually is kind of good for them. And I just thought about this. It opens up a whole security aspect of it. Man, that could be big for wow. Never even thought about that till just now. Armored cars. Imagine autonomous armored cars where you remove the human element from it. It'd be very hard to hijack one. You can't take people and extort them into doing it because it's a vehicle. It doesn't have any feelings or emotions. You program it to go from point A to point B. It's like the ATM dispensing money. It just does it. It doesn't. There's not a guy in the box there deciding whether or not he should give you money or not. It's just a machine doing it. You could use it, and like when we talked to that guy, we didn't learn any trade secrets or anything. We were just fascinated and just wanted to know more about the technology. But that might have been considered a security breach. And for disclaimer, I don't even remember what the guy looks like, so don't let anybody come out from Google asking me who it was, because I couldn't tell you. All I could tell you is where we bought some pizza from. But the street view, by doing this, they remove the human element. They get the test the autonomous vehicle, and then they can put technologies that they really don't want people to know about in this car because there's no human element in the car. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, so they're using it for street mapping, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Another interesting fact is they've logged approximately 1.4 million miles on autonomous driving. That's a lot of miles. Now, granted, when you get into statistics and stuff like that, I don't think they can't have too many cars. I don't imagine them having more than a couple of thousand cars tops. So 1.4 million across. I have no idea how many cars they have. Let's just say they have 1,000 cars. That's still a lot of miles across. 1,000 cars, 1.4 million miles. That's pretty impressive. And I'm surprised that local governments like the state, I believe it was Kirkland, Washington, they were pretty open to the idea because a lot of, even in Oregon, where I'm from, they're starting to have congestion problems in the bigger cities. And, of course, if you go to someplace like L.A. or something, or like Denver, they got really serious bad congestion problems during certain hours of the day. But they might have a foot into getting adoption from city and planners and such, because it's the promise is it probably will relieve traffic, get traffic relief. You could, they do stuff like try to set up, what do they call those, special lanes for carpool lanes and stuff like that in an attempt to help relieve traffic. In Oregon, they do silly things like up north where they have stoplights trying to get cars on and off the freeway, or onto the freeway, by putting, like, they'll have two lanes and stoplights that alternate. And to me, it causes more confusion. It doesn't seem to help anything. Just made a big weird. If you ever go there the first time, you're like, why is there a stoplight on the on ramp to the freeway? That's kind of weird, and it doesn't do anything that I can see. I mean, still you're waiting to get on the freeway, which is already congested. But anyways, the autonomous vehicles could totally help with that, because they could do algorithms, stop, slow up or speed down to help avoid traffic areas and take detours that are probably faster, even though they don't seem to it, because they have a network of info telling them best routes to take. So I think we might see city planners adopting them more because of the traffic release promise. Let's see. Oh, okay. Right now, of course, this makes sense. The autonomous vehicle people are saying right now their biggest problem is rules, traffic rules and such, are impeding their testing and development. And that makes sense because, again, the rules are written around drivered vehicles and stuff like that. And to have no driver in there, it goes into a whole new realm that people don't know how to deal with. Like, let's say somebody hits an autonomous vehicle. It's not the autonomous vehicle's fault. It causes a car accident. They have to come. They tow them away. Who has to fill out the paperwork for the autonomous vehicle? It wasn't their fault, but they still got to fill out paperwork. I've been involved in a couple accidents that weren't my fault. Usually, like, there's a three-car, somebody hits the car back, he rolls forward, hits the car in front of him, and then they roll over and hit my car. And then because they got bumped, I got to hang around for the police, and then they show up, and then I got to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork. And there's three cars involved. You got to trade names and everything. It's just a big nightmare. Even though it wasn't your fault, you're just sitting there stopped, and three cars back, somebody had an accident that happened to involve your car that you had nothing to do with. So when you have things like that, I could totally see, okay, well, do we have to fill out paperwork for this car? How does that happen? So those kind of things are kind of scary for the rule makers of the road, so to speak. Some kind of important things, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, it sounds like they're starting to get on board with this. And those are the big guys. You get their attention, you got something going, but you got to deal with them if you're going to put cars on the road. It sounds like they're going to exempt 2,500 vehicles from the laws, and just probably give them a special sticker and say, okay, this is an autonomous vehicle. We're only going to do it for 2,500 vehicles. And we'll give them a sticker for 2 years. And I don't know about the sticker thing. That's just probably how they're going to do it. Basically, they'll probably have a registered car, pay a whole bunch of money, and then you're allowed to test that autonomous car. But they're only going to give out 2,500 across the automakers. And that, I don't know if that includes Google or not, but definitely includes the automakers, because they're part of they fall under the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. When I say they fall under, they're tightly woven into when they make decisions like putting airbags. A lot of that stuff comes from them. Car manufacturers don't like to do some of the silly things they come up with, and a lot of times these guys will push it. And sometimes it's good ideas, and a lot of times it's bad ideas. Think about the early 90s automatic safety seatbelt restraint devices. And they said, you have to have one of those in. And the car manufacturer said, what is that? And they said, we don't know, but you can't sell a car unless you have one. And that's where you got those safety straps that automatically strangled you. And then there was such a complaint to the government about those that they said, okay, well, we'll drop that. But that car makers did not want to put those in. And it was so vaguely written. But they had to do something that sounded like an automatic safety restraint device back in the 90s. And they didn't know what that meant. The government didn't know what that meant. But the government said, you have to have whatever this thing is. We don't understand what it is yet. Just come up with something. And so sometimes rules like that come down. Anyway, so they're going to exempt 2,500 vehicles across the board for 2 years for manufacturers like GM probably and Ford and other automakers to allow them to test autonomous vehicles on the road. Let's see. And supposedly the transportation secretary said, and I don't really, these guys say this stuff all the time, and then they come back a year later and say, "Are we done with this yet?" And they're like, "Well, we haven't even started, or we've started and it's lost in committee and stuff." But they said they're going to set up guidelines within 6 months. I'll believe that when I see it. I've seen too many times these government agencies come up, even though they've been mandated by Congress to act on something, and within 2 months or something, and then you come back 2 years later and they're still not done with it. And then Congress starts trying to crack down on them, and they're like, "Well, I hate to tell you this, but we sent over this letter to Congress, and you guys never replied to us, so we couldn't press forward." And then it becomes a big pointing game, and everybody's saying, "Well, we apologize for dropping the ball." And then some law gets passed, and then it gets shelved again. But supposedly within 6 months, the transportation secretary is gonna come up with some autonomous driving rules. So it really does look like this is pressing forward, and it's definitely serious when you start getting National Highway Safety and Traffic Administration and Transportation Secretary coming out making statements about rule changes and exemption certificates, or whatever you call it, registration. That's some serious catching some attention, and the fact that they've been doing it for 6 years. So like I said in my prediction was they're here already. It's just that we don't know about it, and we haven't, it's not widely accepted. Also, I just want to finish up some thoughts. It's really going to revolutionize. It's kind of like, why buy a car? I think that's what's going to happen to the new generation. It's like you're going to have like an Uber app and say, "I want to go to the mall," and you click a button, and 5 minutes later, a car's here. It already knew where you wanted to go because you did that when you hit the app. And you just get in the car, takes you to the mall, drops you off. You don't have to pay car insurance. You don't have to pay for gas. It's all priced into the price of the car. And if they get it down to that, it's that easy to use. I've already seen businessmen that use Uber when they do travel nationwide to different states. They're using Uber instead of the other things because they're reliable. Like, I was talking to a guy, an exec for a company. He came in, he used the Uber because it was easy and convenient. It took him from the airport to where he's going, and then you get to be more personal with it. It's a guy who wants to be a taxi driver, and he's not like on a 16-hour shift or something crazy like that. He's just doing it in his spare time to make a couple bucks on the side, and he could say like, "Hey, can you? I want to have you again. I'm going to be done in about an hour, so just hang around, and I'll use you to get back to the airport." And so you get that personal relationship going, and he's not stressed, or if you try to do that with a regular taxi guy, he doesn't have any control that I'm aware of, the saying where he can go and stuff like that. Anyways, when it's getting that easy for Uber, suddenly the next step, the Uber guys could be the Microsofts of this whole thing. They keep getting this networking stuff down, the software apps and stuff. Suddenly the autonomous vehicle comes out, and you just pull the driver out of it. Now you got a fleet of Uber cars that are autonomous, and you've already got you've got the infrastructure, quote, the software in place to do this. And then that could be the next Microsoft right there. So there's your money-making tech tip right there, is keep an eye on Uber, because they could become the next Microsoft for these autonomous vehicles. Anyhow, so I thought I'd just bring you up to update on this. If you like this video, hit like, and if you subscribe, you'll hear about more videos as they come out. Thank you for watching.